We're gonna just have a cool chat. I'm really actually looking forward to this because we have these conversations all the time, and I always feel like, oh man, we should be recording because they're just so interesting. And
That
you're
was
already
that was lemon balm, by the way.
you're already taking herbs.
Melissa officinalis too.
Yeah.
I went and harvested that plant out in the garden at La Familia here in Fort Collins, and got to know her. She came home, and that was my first tincture I ever made. Covered her, filled up a mason jar, and covered her up in organic cane alcohol, and waited a month, and ta-da!
What does she do for you?
She is she's known as the happiest herb. She's known in
Hmm.
herbal circles as being the happiest herb on earth, something like that. And I like her for that. I like that's something in particular that really helps me. It's um it's an interesting herb too because lemon balm is aromatic, but it's also cooling. So a lot of herbs that are aromatic and they're dispersive, they get in your body, they expand, they stimulate processes. Many of those herbs are very warm, and so it's nice to have one that's cooling because I run hot, so I can take a little more of that herb without sweating myself out or throwing myself out of balance too much. So
So
eh,
it's as you know, I always think all the way in, right? So
yeah.
when you said it's the happiest herb, I immediately thought about how much people are always looking for like the silver bullet, right? Like they're like, "Oh, I'm depressed. Should I just take Melissa?"
Well, that's a big thing in herbalism. That's you get people will say, "Oh, lemon balm. Well, what is lemon balm?" Which is Melissa. What is lemon balm good for? And I don't so much go as for what it's good for as to the energetics. If you speak to the energetics of it, I mean, yes, it's a nervine, and yes, it increases, probably, it increases happiness. I don't know, it does help mood and it's uplifting, but it's also important to know that it's cooling and that it also every herb has a flavor, so that well, this is sour, and sour things, that sour taste has an affinity to the liver, so it helps with the mood, but it doesn't go to your central nervous system and depress it. It goes to the liver and kind of cools the heat. Think of the liver. The liver heat is that guy with the red bulbous nose who's like, whoa, is about to, heart is about to explode. No, I don't want to be cavalier about it, No, but it's for when that heat is rising, the red face, the flush, the irritability, that kind of thing. So it
Mm.
tends to do that a little better. My herb school teacher told me as well. I studied with someone here in Fort Collins, a master herbalist, wonderful program we took. She talked about how lemon balm, if you take it day after day over a course of months, just a little drop dosage, you don't need a ton. You take a little bit day after day, and over time, it helps to kind of really cement in that ability to, something kind of doesn't go your way, or, it can be simple life things. You got up late for work and now you're just behind all day. It helps you deal with little things like that better. You just don't quite get as, now this whole day shot now and stuff. It's just a little bit of resilience. It's a gentle kind of happiness,
Interesting.
it's a
So,
sweetness, like all the herbs are interesting like that because you look in a book and you look for the word nervine. That's a category of herbs. So there's 12, 15, 18, 24, whatever, a number of herbs that you could call nervines. You say, well, what does that do? Say, oh, well, that calms the nervous system, helps improve mood. It's good for depression, and but they all kind of have their own thing.
yeah.
They work in slightly
Otherwise,
different ways.
you would just need the one, right? Like
Yeah.
there would be
Yeah, and
one
then
turbine and that's that.
sure, and then there's my thing. I like to work as an herbalist. I like to work at where like the interface between the emotional and the physical. And there's like like a spiritual, emotional kind of intuitive component to all that. Um, I was having a day a couple of weeks ago, and just old things, family dynamics can be, it can be tough, and I just had one of those days where I just couldn't let go of something that was really just, I was in that track and angry, angry. And I went outside my apartment and I saw the dandelions that are just popping up here because it says we record this, it's springtime, and there was that really special kind of deep, vibrant yellow that the dandelion blossoms are. Joyful warrior, Taraxacum officinale is the joyful warrior dandelion. And she just looked up at me from the lawn and was like, "Eat me, eat me." And I had two blossoms, and I'm telling you that all of the grinding on the things, the people who have wronged me, all of that just kind of flattened out. It lost its edge. I didn't forget about the things that have happened in my life, and I didn't forget about the relationship, but it just took the immediacy of it like out of my body. It took me out of that feeling state and put me in the present. Now, you could look in 100 different herb books and you could look up dandelion. You're never going to find dandelion listed as a nervine, right?
Right.
Dandelion isn't good for depression. It
Anger,
isn't
right.
good for anger. It isn't good for this. You want passiflora, incarnata, passion flower to slow the monkey mind. But when you make a relationship with these plants and you see them and you see a yellow blossom like that, and it just literally, I couldn't wait for April to come for the blossoms to come out. And
Mm.
they come out and you see the yellow and you're happy and you're just you're just like, yay, it's dandelion. And you just when you realize that all that vibrant yellow and that beauty of those red disc flowers just that
Yeah.
symmetry, you realize that it's trapped sunlight. It's the energy of the
Mm.
sun that's turned into physical form. Then you take that physical form into your body and you think about it, and I chewed the flower, and it's like you open your mouth to the sun. It's the most
Like the
amazing.
flashlight, except made of sunlight.
Yeah. It's the most amazing thing like that. So herbalism is it's an
Well,
interesting
it's
road to go down.
yeah, I love that you said relationship with the plants because I mean, being someone in the plant medicine world, like psychedelic, right? Like we always talk about that, but it's not often talked about in the herbalism world because it's like this is for this. This is how our culture has taught
Hmm.
us, right? Like how this, you take passion flower if you're anxious, or you take, if you know that much, or you just buy a tea that says for anxiety or stress relief, right?
Hmm.
And you're talking about a different level. It's funny when you were talking about the dandelions, I at first I had an image of me as a child, like blowing the dandelion, to flow away. And I was like, oh wait, actually, as little girls, we would pick dandelions and we would weave the crowns. The what are they called? You know what I'm talking about,
Or
right?
like a wreath.
The wreath, yeah, and you like the thing you put over your head. And I remember like you just feel so special. Just I'm thinking of what relationships I've ever had with plants like that. So it's more than what does it make you feel like when you ingest it or drink the tea, right? It's like you're actually like you're someone who talks to you talk to your plants. You're like some of them, So I love that you're bringing that in because I feel like people need to like kind of relearn, like remember that we're having relationships with, well, you have relationships with tomatoes for crying out. Like, yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that, the more I study, you could really go down the hole with research, for example. So, for example, you could look up, you could read about dandelions, and you could read that yellow color comes from a certain kind of phytochemical called a carotenoid, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Um, And so you could read in a book that it does this, and oh, carotenoids are good and they're antioxidants. And don't quote me on any of this. I'm just making stuff up right now. But it's good. It has antioxidants, and it'll go and it'll do this and it'll do that. But there's a greater wisdom in these plants that we don't really know how these phytochemicals actually work.
Mm.
At the molecular, we're not really sure what's going on. So it's an interesting, being an herbalist is an interesting combination of understanding some of these, at least the chemical cause and effect. Like you don't know how it exactly works. Same way you don't know how it works when you flip a light switch, but you know that you flip a light switch and the light goes on. You know there's a connection there, so you can use herbs that way. But I think we just kind of,
Well,
I
that's where the
think,
intuition comes in, right? Like
yeah, I think so. I
why
think,
you had the dandelion when you were angry instead of going for the passion flower or even the lemon balm, right? Like
yeah,
that's where I feel like our intuition and our energy field knows more than the books will tell us about the,
yeah.
you know?
And there's clinical herbalists with 20, 30, 40 years of experience that see, 20 people a week that have seen absolutely every presentation of symptoms, and they are the ones who can, go in and, maybe to a larger extent and say and really put together things that kind of almost like mimic a biomedical or a symptomatic approach.
Hmm.
I don't want to misspeak and I don't want to characterize other people's work as being that, but
Yeah.
uh but there is an extent to which you can just let the plants do the work, especially when you're doing emotional intuitive work and you're not trying to, cure a specific set of symptoms,
Yeah.
a rash with small little rash with a red area and there's sweating under the armpits and you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's just like this weird symptom pattern. And,
Hmm.
you know,
So
so
yeah, so you're not into matching the symptom patterns to the
not
pages
so
in the
much.
book. Yeah.
Not so much. That's good to try from time to time.
Yeah.
That's good. It's a slightly different animal too, when you're dealing with talking to somebody on Zoom, and as opposed to being in the room with them, talking to somebody on Zoom as a one-off, having 30 minutes or 90 minutes to talk to somebody that you just met. You're not in the room. I can't take the pulse. I can't see the tongue. There's a little more trial and error involved in
Mhm.
that process. Um, and
Do you want to
Yeah,
say, because I mean, there's lots of ways that you work with people, and you just mentioned 30 minutes, 90 minutes. Do you want to say more about like what does each one look like and sound like and feel like?
the sure the 30-minute consult. Different people come to a 30-minute. I think a lot of people, sometimes people will will buy a product on Best Chinese Medicines, the website. They'll buy a product and they want to know, or they maybe have a cough, and they're like, okay, well, there's 12 different formulas for cough. Which one do I want? I have, so the 30-minute consult is designed to be an extended conversation, where we get into some details about, somebody's situation, and in other, as opposed to you come in to see somebody and you bring your charts and you have this medical, and it's meant to be a conversation about what's going on with the person.
Okay.
Um,
So not too terribly in depth because 30 minutes doesn't seem like a long time, but it also sounds like you get into some detail.
you can get, yes, we can definitely get into some detail. It's the kind of detail we get into that just emerges over the course of the conversation. So,
Right.
some people come with blood test results and they're like, I have these diagnoses, I've taken these things, and I want to know what to do next. So we have a conversation about things that somebody might do next in their process of healing. Um, we try to bring in a lot of things that you might forget about, like somebody who's having digestive problems, for example. You could take all the herbs in the world, but if you're really stressed out, You have to deal with that aspect of it. If you're like me and you wolf your food down without, swallowing, and chew your food, you have to chew your food carefully. Let the saliva mix through and start the digestive enzymes breaking things down. You could take some apple cider vinegar 15 minutes before a meal, which gets the digestive juices flowing. Those are very simple kind of fixes. You can feel digestive stagnation an hour after a meal. All you need is 8 ounces of water because your body just doesn't have enough water to process the food. It can be really simple. Like you don't need a whole formula. You don't need a medical intervention.
Mm,
What you need is an idea of the process that's happening from start to finish and all of the different factors that lead into that process happening. And you just try to
that's very
make
cool.
you make little tweaks here and there. So you try a little tweak, try a couple of, I'm going to chew my food 20 times and I'm going to take a one forkful of, good quality sauerkraut before a meal. And that's it. And that's the only change. You may make that change and
Not
you
even
notice
need the
quite
herbs,
the
right?
improvement. Then you bring the herbs in later. Now you have a better, now that your body's digestive, own natural digestive processes are going a little better. Now you can start to bring in, various herbs that can either stimulate digestive secretions might be one thing you need to do. You may need to soothe the mucosa of the stomach. You may need to
So
really
you're
reduce the stress. There's,
So, as you're talking to this person over
hmm
the course of that 30 minutes or maybe 90 minutes, depending, right?
hmm
Like you're kind of asking these questions, right? You're saying like, well, how do you eat your food? Are you standing up with your phone and, maybe even
hmm
already like on your in your car on your way to work and, that kind of thing, right? Right? Like you're checking in with this person. So, like one thing I'm hearing is like when you go to a doctor, they're thinking, what pill do I prescribe? Like they're immediately on that wavelength of what drug is necessary. And a lot of people will come to herbalists saying, well, I want the natural version of that, right? Well, my doctor wants to give me um, laxatives or, gentle stool softeners and, and can you give me a
hmm
natural version of that? And you are thinking even deeper than that. You're like, I'm not just going to give you a natural version of a pill, right? You're looking at how is the body functioning? What does it need? What doesn't it need? And so it's more than just herbs is what you're doing. You're doing like lifestyle adjustments and you're checking in with your clients about that kind of stuff in tandem.
Sure. Sure.
And
Yeah.
that's not a given, and I'm
Sure,
kind
sure.
of,
There's that aspect of it, another aspect of it too is that in the course of the discussion, you might talk about a lot of, we'll call them interventions like this. One of the reasons behind the reason that we'll talk about something like that in a 30-minute consult is because I'm making the assumption that I'm talking to the person now, I'm making the assumption that that you're responsible for your own health. There's nothing that I can do to make you healthy. Like there's a common idea that if something feels wrong and something feels off, we need to go to somebody and have them tell you what to do next. I want to add the caveat that it is scary as all get out to really have something feel seriously wrong or seriously off. And I understand that absolute
yeah,
terror that you can feel when you think, oh my God, is this thing cancer that I have? And is this? And then I'm gonna get on and have a half-hour conversation. You're gonna tell me how I can rub a little bit of dandelion juice on my hand and my cancer will go away.
right,
So it doesn't work like that, so in
right.
that sense there's no silver bullet, you know but you can take responsibility for your own healing, um by if we do find some good herbs maybe to apply topically, to a rash or a sore or something you have, and then you actually have to go and get some herbs and boil them on the stove for 30 minutes in some
Mm,
water, and you know, and then rub the, put a cloth in the tea that you've made and keep it on your hand while you're watching TV that night. And that's not as easy as taking a pill. It's not
Right.
as mindless. It's not a quick solution. It's not somebody coming and making everything really easy, and
Yeah.
that being said, herbs can work seem to work magically too, even where
Yeah, I've heard you say a number of times, not in this conversation, but just over our lives together, that herbs are actually potent. They're actually strong. Because there's this kind of prevailing belief that it's just like this gentle,
the
like, it's like
well,
it
like
barely touches anything. And I
the
I haven't seen, right, you know what I'm saying?
well, the idea is that there's that like the pharmaceuticals are better because they're stronger and they're more directed and they're scientific and they go to the cause and they have
Right.
action, and the idea that herbs are just kind of this thing and they go in your body and they just kind of float around and yeah, the herbs are really strong, and which is why you have a 30-minute conversation with something before you just start, taking herbs. You think, oh, this is no big deal. And then you take the wrong formula and, you know,
Yeah. Because
you know,
people think like you take the wrong formula, it just doesn't work.
yeah,
Or,
I mean,
right?
if you're having headaches and you already run hot and you take plant material that is energetically warm, you're just going to exacerbate the problem in the first place. You need to cool the body down. You need to use herbs that release the tension, maybe antispasmodics. Maybe you cool the body down. Maybe you take herbs that have a downward energy that bring heat out of the head and down and start to work it towards the organs of excretion. But if you take the wrong, you just go on the website and you buy a formula for headaches, but you're not matched up energetically. It's a warm formula and your headache is basically happening because you're hot and stressed and tired and angry. And then the headache gets worse. And then what do you always hear people say? Herbs don't work.
Hmm.
Well, they do work. They actually worked in your case. They just piled on to a problem you were already having, as
Hmm.
opposed to going the direction you want
So
to go.
in fact, it is proof that they do work because
It
there
is
was an
actually,
effect.
which is why one takes the time and the money to have a conversation with somebody that knows about these herbs. I mean, that's why you book a 30-minute conversation. That's why you have a conversation like this, because you get your head around what's happening. Well, if I take this, given that I've showed these symptoms and have these constitutional characteristics, and this is going on in my life. If I add this herb in right now, what do you think's going to happen? Like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Are you somebody that can stop and take the time to boil a cup of tea and take a half an hour to drink it, or are you on the go? Do we need,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah, so that goes back to the whole thing of like the relationship with the plants, right?
Yeah, and
Because
that's the empowerment piece as well too, because you actually have to take the time. You have to change. You have to stop. A lot of times, you just have to run this treadmill of activity that becomes mindless over time. And it's my belief that sickens the human soul. And so a lot of what herbalism does is it just stops that. It stops that mindless activity, that autonomic, that automatic. We can edit that out, right? The automatic behavior. Um, it stops that and forces you to stop and think about the choices you're making, and that alone, in and of itself, can give something back to the power and the will and the things that live down deeply inside of us
yeah.
that need to be nurtured and just reminded that they're there, for crying out loud. That's
That's beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah, the empowerment piece. So yeah, just to like I'm the one standing here cooking this plant or making this tea or whatever it is,
yeah,
and because I care, I love myself, I want to heal, I want to change something, and I don't want to take a farmy and all, and then it's like you empower yourself and therefore then the plant can go in and do the work without you interfering, as opposed to like, oh, I don't know if this stuff works, I guess I can try it. Right? That's like a very different approach.
yeah.
And when people say it doesn't work, it's probably because they didn't let it.
Well, and another piece to that is that anything that's chronic. has taken a long time to emerge as a physical ailment, you know. So when you
Yeah.
start to apply herbs, an analogy I like to think about, it's not a perfect analogy, but the idea, like, you know, how long do you have to wait after a breakup before you feel normal? Like the longer you were in the bad
Yeah.
situation, the longer you have to be free of that bad situation to get back to baseline. And there's that kind of concept in there too, you know, that like, you know, a lifetime of diet, you know, that
Yeah.
causes,
Stress.
you know, lifetime of diet and stress that causes body systems to wear down in particular ways, you know, requires, you know,
Yeah.
some time and care,
Well, and you know
you
what
know.
else that makes me think of is self-awareness of like the nuance changes, right? Like, because I mean, that's a learned skill. That's a learned,
Yeah,
our culture doesn't really teach us that, and especially if you go to the doctor and the drugs are strong and there's an impact, your fever goes down immediately or, things like that versus herbs, they are working, they're just in more subtle ways, and you have to be able to feel into, what is a shift? What does that feel like in your body, right? So I feel like if somebody's never been to an herbalist, um, they might need to even be taught that, like, pay attention. Is your headache a little different? Is it
yeah, that's a good point.
slightly softer, right? Are you a little like, are other things changing? Maybe your headaches are still like meh, but maybe you're a little gentler. Maybe you have a little more kindness towards yourself, right? Like, because other things may be changing because herbs are working in these kind of synergistic ways, right? I hadn't thought about this in a long time because you and I are just so in tune with what's going
Hmm.
on, but what you were just saying made me think of, like it works. You just have to know how to pay attention too, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's good practice.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a good practice.
So
And
I
it,
have a question for
oh,
you,
okay,
not
sure.
related to this, but just off the top of your head, what is your your favorite experience with like taking herbs for yourself? Like the coolest thing that's happened.
The coolest thing has happened. Oh boy, there's a bunch to pick from, you know, because some are physical. You know, right now I'm experimenting with different recipes for a tea that that is working to deal with inflammation in the joints and like muscle cramping and a lot of pretty it's not debilitating yet. That's why I'm drinking the tea now, you know. But the subtleties and just in the ways that I've toyed with the recipe and, you know, maybe good, you know, my first recipe, I put every herb in. I bombed this thing with every herb that had every mineral in the book. And what I found out is I drank the tea and I would drink 8 ounces of the tea and I would be so thirsty because I took in so many minerals that I actually needed I needed to put water in my system so my body could break those water molecules apart and use that to process all the minerals. So all of that is to say that I made the tea too strong, it was unbalanced. There was too many minerals in it. I was like, my body doesn't need, you know, 10 pounds of silica. You know, it needs 5 pounds of silica. You know, that's all I can deal with in 24 hours, you know. So I've played around with that. I've taken some of that out. I added in some herbs that help the body build collagen, you know, some mucinogens to help just lubricate the joints and a couple antispasmodics, um, you know, and a couple of herbs in there to help move all that heavy material, all those minerals, you know, because there's still a lot of minerals in this tea and you take them in your body and it's like, imagine when they just sink to the bottom, you know, you need to stir it. So there's herbs that do that too, that stir the whole mix up and spread it out and distribute it through the body where it needs to go. And so that's been really fun to watch that process happen and to feel the subtlety in my body, how actually make something that's less strong but more balanced has a better effect than just more is better.
So what did
Um,
you experience from that?
I experienced just knowing that I could have something in my body that feels pretty serious and some pain and some, having a really tough time walking around, and to be able to go into my kitchen and fix something up and in 3 or 4 days be sailing. Like the pain's gone, the inflammation's gone. Now I had to stop eating sugar also, which harkens back to the point before, which is like you could throw all the herbs in the world that you wanted, all of the herbs in the world that you want to, but if you are constantly, this modern diet is just absolute garbage. The absolute, I can't even comprehend you know, how
Yeah.
it's allowed to go on. We'll say, I don't want to turn this into a
Yeah.
rant, you know what I mean? But it's absurd. Potassium bromate, in your bread. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
really?
Hey, rant away. This
I
is the
don't want
place
to.
to
I
be.
rant.
I know
I,
what you mean.
we live together. I can rant anytime. So I can rant
Well,
at you.
yeah, I wanted you to give an example of something that,
Um,
like one of
so,
them you gave us
but
about the
yeah,
dandelion.
but the dandelion, there's been a lot of like things like that happen all the time.
Yeah.
I have a lot of meditative experiences that aren't actually physical, where I've touched roots with plants, to help ground
Mhm.
me, and um I you know, drop dosage of 5 drops of valerian tincture that I took, one time, and another time that my mind was just you know, like mood stuff. You can have really dramatic, I have really dramatic, positive mood swings. Like my
Mm.
mood will swing in a positive way with like the minusculest amount of plant matter, because there's an
Yeah.
understanding that the plants and I they're there to help. That's probably the coolest experiences that over time, though, that what I've come to find is like time and time again, every time things feel like they're getting out of control, whether it's physically or emotionally, I go to the plants, and every time I go to the plants, they're like, come on in, no problem, no judgment, no worries. You deserve healing, or I'm like, really? Like, yeah, like, really? And they
Mm.
take care,
So they have unconditional love for us. All you have to
Yes.
do is ask, right?
Yeah, that's something I'm starting to build space in my psyche to really take in and understand as a natural part of life and humanity. That there is
Yeah.
unconditional love, that love is meant to be shared. Like you don't have to earn, you know, like the way I think about it is like when I talk to the plants, especially when I'm, grinding on, a situation or a person that I'm angry with, the plants will stop and talk to me and say, you know, I go and heal them too. Like the plants will heal, the plants would heal a bastard too,
Oh,
they would heal a son of a gun, you know what I mean? Like in other words,
yeah.
they take care of everybody. They don't judge, they don't decide, well, you deserve it and you have a good job and you make enough money so you get medical care, and and then you, however, are a ne'er-do-well, and you know, fie upon
Or
you.
even like you haven't had a good diet and you haven't taken care of yourself and like you can come in in whatever stage you're in and still
Yeah.
receive that love and support. I mean, it
Yeah.
may take longer because if it's been a lifetime, but that's a different point. Point is
Yeah.
you're accepted wherever you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's
amazing.
a nice thing. Not enough of that in the world. So, we're
No.
we're on a mission to we're on a mission to just normalize that.
I know.
know?
Well,
You
and just
know?
even think about that last topic we just, the unconditional love, like that's quite esoteric for some circles, right?
Yeah.
Like herbs are this 3D physical thing that you ingest or and
Yeah.
we're talking about them having consciousness and them
But
having attention.
and even on the and still to keep it on the 3D level, like you're either in sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system states, right? And when you're in sympathetic nervous system, that's fight, flight, fawn, freeze. When you're in that agitated nervous system state, your body cannot, by definition, your body can't heal. Like you have to get out of that sympathetic nervous state, go into
Mhm.
parasympathetic so that you can heal. And you know, at the base of that of being in parasympathetic is just feeling love and safe and calm. You have to feel like you're not being assaulted by whatever, or just assaulted. You have to feel loved and comfortable and safe, and then you can heal. Like without that, again, like the
Do you
plants is
think
go ahead.
do you think herbs can help with that? Or do you have to first
Sure.
be accepting and open and then receive the herbs? Or is it a catch 22?
No, I think it's both at the same time. I mean, I think well, like who's like Jesus had it down, Buddha had it down, but the rest of us have got to like kind of fight this back and forth, you know, are in this ebb and flow you
Mhm.
know, of impulse and we'll call it larger, more expansive consciousness. Um, so yeah, the herbs can help. Yeah, the herbs. Yeah, that's to me that's axiomatic. I almost don't even know how to handle that
You're
question because
like,
I'm like, well, yeah,
why are you
help.
asking that?
Like
Well,
the I
and
already.
it came up because you were saying like, well, you need to be in parasympathetic in order to heal at all,
Mhm.
which means, well, if I'm going to take in herbs, but I'm in sympathetic, that means I'm not going to let them heal me.
Sure. So you could try a stress relief tea. You could try you could maybe try a tea that has like kava kava or skullcap or passion flower or valerian or hops. Any one of those is a central nervous system, we'll say depressant, but it calms the central nervous system down. There's other nervines, herbs that are specifically classified to help with the mood, but they're a little more relaxant in a way that doesn't go to the core. And so, your catnip and and the one that's on the tip of my tongue that I can't remember now, lemon balm, because yeah, right.
Because you already swallowed it. It's not on the tip of
So
your
there's
tongue
so there's
anymore.
so there's there's different herbs that work in a slightly different way, but I find that if your digestion is upset, and you're just cranky and you can't settle in and you drink a little tea and one of the components of the tea is fennel seed. It's delicious and it's a lovely carminative herb that will help to just regulate all of the subtle dynamics of digestion that are going on in the body that are dysregulated because you just ate, you know,
Yeah, lasagna.
four pieces of chicken instead of two, or
Mhm.
two donuts, two donuts,
Two or
because
three donuts.
this one time I had two donuts and two times I had three donuts. It's for the Big Bang fans out there. Yeah, you can if you take an herb like that that helps to relieve that stress, and now you don't feel now you can actually lie down in bed because it's 12 o'clock and you have to be up at 7 the next morning to go do something and you can't sleep because you have a little tea with fennel seed. I would see that and that would improve my mood a ton,
Yeah.
and it would improve my mood the next day because I actually managed to sneak out 6 7 hours of sleep,
Mhm.
instead of waking up 3 or 4 times,
So I have another question for you.
okay.
Who do you wish would come to an herbalist like yourself? Like, what kind of person or what kind of struggles do you wish more people would come to herbs for?
I wish more people would come to herbs um to help them navigate the culture. I don't know if that makes sense. I know
Ooh,
you probably know what I'm talking about because,
right. Oh my
but
gosh, say more about that.
I just think that the culture, I think there's so many things that we do that are normalized. They're normal, but they're not natural. And so it kind of messes with our head, like,
Hmm.
and so I like the idea of, using herbs to just using herbs for support while you like figure out who you are and what you're doing in this culture. And like, do I really want to work? 40 to 60 hours a week? Do I want to take that promotion at work and, become a restaurant manager, instead of a server, and because that's what I'm supposed to do, or maybe you had kids and you were like, "Hmm," I have friends who, you know, are like, have mixed feelings about not about their kids, but about life situations and stuff like we all do all the time. You make your choice and you live with the choice. And, you know, I would like people to work with herbs to help them to understand, why they made the choices and, why they made the choices yeah, I don't know. I'd have to talk for a while. It's hard to nail
Yeah,
that one down. It's hard to
that's
nail that one
okay.
down.
I think this is a
Yeah.
good topic for another conversation, maybe all on its own,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
we're kind of at the edges of something really powerful. Um, I didn't expect you to say that. I thought you would say things like, I wish people would come to herbs before they came to a doctor for like proton pump inhibitors and stuff like that, which
I
I know
mean,
you do.
sure,
But
sure.
you
I'd
said
love.
something so deep that I feel like it deserves a conversation, and I know people are gonna really want to hear that. Like, wait, herbs can help you navigate the culture? What? I mean,
Yeah.
I intuitively get what you're saying, and I don't have time
Yeah. I
for,
mean, even if you're just funneled into having to, buy bread with enriched whole wheat flour instead of being able to make your own bread. I mean, that's a cultural choice. It's a choice within the bounds of the culture that we live in
right?
that you just can't make the choice you want to make, which is like I'd grow and make all my damn food if I could,
Oh,
but
and then you're saying like herbs
yeah.
can help mitigate some of the impacts of
Yeah, they
that?
can help mitigate some of the impacts. So physically, they can help mitigate some of the impacts. They they also can show you, like you blew your mind that you could take what was it, apple cider vinegar and honey. Like if you feel like you have heartburn, you actually take some apple cider vinegar, which you're like, and you looked at me like I was nuts. And
Like, wait, I have too much acid. What are you
I
talking
have too
about?
much acid and you want me to take apple cider vinegar and it has a
Totally
regulating,
works.
especially with the honey, it really
Yeah.
just regulates and levels things out. Now, instead of taking a product that was produced by multinational corporations that do not have your best interest in mind to shut down the natural process by which your stomach regulates acid levels and gastric secretions, which we could do a whole nother conversation on, the other things besides digestion that are affected by gastric secretions being off. I probably don't know, one in 100 of the things, because I'm not really a research guy,
Mm.
um, but if you just like, you don't need to shut down your body's natural. I mean, so eating, so that's the point. The point is that it's a cultural choice. It's a part of the culture that we go to a supermarket and we buy our food, that we take cash money, we do something else, we get little pieces of paper, we bind that energy up in these little pieces of paper. We take that bound energy over to the grocery store and we buy a loaf of bread. Well, a loaf of bread is not, what we would have made by our own hand with
Right.
homemade
But it's
sourdough.
mass produced and it has
So
to,
we make
yeah,
that cultural choice because we have to live in the culture, right?
yeah.
So, but so herbs can help you navigate that choice that you're almost like forced to make. Not only does it help with the physical symptoms, but it also helps. It's a choice that you can make. You got pushed into making one choice that you're not crazy about, which is buying a store-bought loaf of bread with potential contaminants, baked into it. You know, now you can make a choice, you know, that allows you to look at the people that are forcing you to make the other choice and say, like, what, I have some power. You don't have all this power over my body. You have some autonomy. You have some integrity. The very active, healing comes out of that
Mhm.
type of life. That's how the mind change. That's how you change your mind. That's how it's not everybody feels like it's this big, I'm going to take this herb and I'm going to see golden, and it does happen sometimes.
Yeah,
I've had it happen and it's
yeah,
cool,
that's
you
cool.
know, and then you realize it's natural and then it becomes, you don't need to brag on it, to
Yeah.
people.
It becomes integrated. It
But
becomes something
it becomes normal. What is natural becomes normal. Now it's normal.
nice.
It's normal to go out and, you know, do that. See this, feel that, like, just know in your heart that, there's literal sunlight, in frozen form in those flower heads. It's like
Eat
that's just,
sunlight.
you can eat sunlight. That
I
does
think I'm going
one.
to call our video Eat Sunlight.
Eat sunlight and like it. Yes. Yes.
Oh, well, I have lots more questions for you, but I think maybe we'll save them for another talk.
Okay.
Um,
I know we're supposed to be coming up with raw material for a video, but we'll get there.
no, it's cool. This is really wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to share as we wrap up? What do you want to say to our people?
I want to say drink herbal tea is what I'm going to say. It doesn't matter what. You could go buy ginger and turmeric root at the store and chop it up into little bits on the cutting board and soak it in water for 20 minutes and, drink that. It's hot. Watch out. If you're hot like me, don't do that. But, you know, but that's, it could be whatever. You go to your local herb shop, you go to your local grocery store and buy some tea. It's not going to be as good as, going to an herb shop and buying something that a herbalist blends and, so just drink tea. There's so many antioxidants and phytochemicals and actions that we don't even really get. And you don't need to get any of them to get the benefits. You just
Yeah.
drop a clove of garlic in 12 ounces of hot water and pull it out after 3 minutes, and you'll be doing wonders for your circulatory
Wow.
system. That's it. That's all you have to do.
Yeah. All I
That's it.
would, yeah, that's so beautiful.
Or
And I
chop up a piece of garlic and throw it on, like make your spaghetti,
see now
and
that's not tea.
put the sauce on and
Now
cut
you're
that up and
saying
cut up a little in a little
eat
fret.
nature.
Yeah, so drink tea, eat nature. All right,
Nice.
you're good.
I would say like when you said drink tea, I'm like, well, what kind of tea? And then like what I want to say to people is intuit, right? Like, are you drawn to the hibiscus rose hip blends, right? Or is that really like somehow unsettling? Are you drawn to the lemon balm tea or right? Go ahead.
If it tastes good, if you take a sip of it and it tastes really good, if you really stop and you take a sip and you feel it going and it feels tastes really good and feels good, it's probably got something you need,
Nice.
because
Yay.
it's probably not, it won't heal your high blood pressure in one cup, and it won't, that's not how this works. It won't take the pain
Yeah.
away, it won't do this, but it will, you know,
Well, that's why
it's
you drink tea like throughout your life and
yeah,
not just when you get sick, you're like, okay, what herb is good for this? But
yeah. I
just
didn't
have tea.
I didn't drink herbal. I never drank a cup of herbal tea until last year when I started an herbal program for Western herbs. And I was like, I needed caffeine, so it was green oolong or black or coffee because I couldn't be without my coffee. And
Right.
now it's a different
Yeah.
game
Yeah.
now, as you
Nice.
know, because we share a kitchen. So
Because we do. Yeah. And I'm looking at an entire rack of herbs in front of me.
yeah,
So
it's literally they're literally exploding out of the cabinets now. All the
yeah.
jars, probably 50 or 60 different kind of herbs kicking around this tiny, ridiculous apartment, as we like to call it,
Yeah.
that we're so grateful for.
We're so grateful. Yeah.
So,
Well, this is a lovely talk. I hope we have many
yeah,
more.
yes.
Yeah. Thank you
So
for sharing.
episode zero of
Episode episode
the
one. We're gonna count this.
culture and herbs and culture,
Herbs and
something like
culture.
that.
All
Cool.
righty.
All right.
Well, we'll
Great
see
talking
you
to you.
another time.
Very good. Take care.